global leader of eco-friendly future materials. Green tomorrow with POSCO.
Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea's President Yoon replaces 15 high-level government officials as he looks to tighten his grip on the reform drive. A former weightlifting gold medalist was named as the country's vice culture minister. Heavy rain affected most parts of South Korea today, causing traffic accidents and a series of flooding damage elsewhere. A woman in her 60s was found dead after being missing since Tuesday while trying to check on a floodgate. South Korea and Japan have decided to resume their currency swap deal after an 8-year pause. The new arrangement, worth $10 billion, is expected to boost economic cooperation between the two countries amid global uncertainty and risks. Good evening, it's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. President Yoon's office has announced new names for some key government posts in the administration's first major shakeup, including high-profile candidates on North Korea and culture and sports, hoping to add momentum for the administration's reform drive. Our presidential correspondent Oh Soo-hyung starts us off.
President Yoon carried out his first major reshuffle of key government officials on Thursday, replacing 15 ministerial and vice ministerial positions, hoping to gain momentum in pushing through his key state policies, spanning inter-Korean relations to energy and labor reform. First, the administration announced its pick for Unification Minister, who will handle inter-Korean affairs, as Kim Young-ho, an expert in the field, as an academic and an advisor to the government, with current South Korean ambassador to Thailand Moon Sung-hyun as his deputy. Another ministerial-level appointment is that of former prosecutor Kim Hong-il, with a legal background of around 40 years as the Commissioner for Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights. Among the 13 vice ministerial positions named, one standout pick is former Olympic weightlifting gold medalist Jang as the new deputy vice culture minister. Also notably, 5 key appointments were incumbent presidential secretaries, including the Secretary for Management Kim Ho-jin as the first vice land and transport minister, with Bae Kwon-guk as the deputy, expected to oversee housing policies. Also crossing over to the government as vice ministers are Park Sung-hoon for Oceans and Fisheries, Im Sang-jun for Environment, and Cho Sung-kyung for Science and ICT. Other postings include current ambassador to Vietnam Oh Young-ju as deputy vice foreign minister, along with other deputies at the Finance, Startup, Labour and Agricultural Ministries, and the head of the National Human Resources Development Institute. Emphasising the word consistency, senior Yoon officials told reporters that the secretaries were assigned to their respective government roles based on their deep understanding of the administration's major policy drives, indicating a clear desire for closer coordination. The cabinet shake-up was also seen by observers as a move to coordinate and prepare for next year's general elections as key officials repositioned themselves to enter the race. Top Office spokesperson Kim Eun-ah says the president asked his new appointees to break down corrupt power relations and interest groups that hinder public interest.
Politics is about resolving current issues people face day to day and preparing for the future. In the process, reinforcing the values of fairness and rule of law as the starting point of justice for the people, that's been the direction of the Yoon administration consistently to this day.
As vice ministers can simply be named, they will take up their new roles from Monday, while the Unification Minister nominee goes through a separate hearing and confirmation process. Oh Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Some of the 15 names announced today caught more attention than others. Unification Minister nominee Kim Young-ho is known to be a hardliner when it comes to dealing with North Korea. And former weightlifter Jang was a rather surprise announcement. Our Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
Unification Minister nominee Kim says he wants to lay the foundations for resolving the North Korean nuclear issue and improving inter-Korean relations. The professor of political science at Seongsin Women's University is a conservative hardliner on North Korean issues, but was once a leftist during his college days. But in a statement to the media on his potential new office on Thursday, he was very brief, saying all specific questions will be answered during his confirmation hearings.
I will come up with unification measures based on liberal democracy and basic order, and work hard to gain a public consensus.
According to presidential officials, Kim was nominated because he had already served as a presidential secretary for unification in the past and is currently involved with the Unification Ministry as chairman of its Unification Future Planning Committee. In addition, they explained that the decision to put a career diplomat, South Korean ambassador to Thailand Moon Sung-hyun, as his deputy comes as Kim is considered an outsider and the ambassador will help him get used to the ministry. Meanwhile, in a surprise move, an Olympic gold medalist and national icon, former weightlifter Jang, currently a professor at Yoon University, will serve as second vice minister for culture, sports, and tourism. The position oversees the ministry's sports and public engagement duties and is usually reserved for career civil servants. Jang will be just the third athlete appointed to the post. Following a retirement 10 years ago, she showed her willingness and desire to serve the public.
I will work harder to help athletes fit into our society and make a positive impact on it.
Since then, she's earned degrees in sports administration and taught at a university while also running a foundation for athletes needing financial support. According to an official at the presidential office, while the country's culture exports are doing well, and Culture Minister Park Bo-gyun is a former journalist, naming Jang was a move to boost the sports industry through the appointment of a respected athlete with administrative experience. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
A bill mandating medical institutions in South Korea to notify local governments of childbirths has passed the National Assembly's Legislation and Judiciary Committee. A revision to the Act on the Registration of Family Relations, the bill will require hospitals to notify all births to the Health Insurance Review and Assessment Service, which will then inform the local authorities of the newborn. This is an attempt to prevent unregistered babies from going missing or potentially being killed, an issue that's been under the spotlight since 2 undocumented babies were found dead last week in an apartment refrigerator in Suwon. The mother later admitted she had killed them due to an economic hardship. Enjoying bipartisan support, the bill is expected to easily pass the Assembly's plenary session scheduled for Friday. The new birth notification system it will establish will take effect 1 year after its promulgation. Monsoon rain has taken its toll on most parts of the country, including here in the capital city of Seoul. One death as well as flood damage has been reported throughout the day, and the government braces for another round of heavy downpours. Our Kim Mo-gyun has the details.
Heavy rainfall has been pouring nationwide since the morning hours in South Korea. Most parts of the country have been under heavy rain advisories. The capital area is expected to see up to 60 millimeters of rain until Friday. Chuncheon City in Gangwon-do Province, meanwhile, saw up to 17 millimeters this afternoon. Due to the downpours, there have been traffic accidents, while some houses and factories have been flooded and trees have collapsed. The first victim of this monsoon has also been reported. A woman in her 60s was found dead Thursday after being missing since Tuesday after trying to check on a floodgate. As part of precautionary measures to prevent water levels from rising, especially in the Han River, authorities have opened up 5 water gates at the Paltang Dam. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo held a safety checkup meeting Thursday afternoon, calling for all-out efforts. He asked for government ministries and related organizations to be excessively ready for situations like landslides and floods, especially at railways, underground areas, and farms. Authorities in the heavily crowded Gangnam area of Seoul have deployed officials to double-check on draining facilities in 5 areas that are prone to flooding. Seoul is running a disaster safety management headquarters and is on emergency standby. It has also prevented citizens from entering at least 27 major streams in the capital. As part of efforts to reassure citizens' safety, a flood forecast system has also been introduced for the first time. A warning message will be sent to the public when precipitation levels surpass 55 millimeters per hour or when flooding reaches up to 15 centimeters. The Korean Meteorological Administration says that rain will continue until Friday and will let up before the weekend for the central regions.
The rain clouds will move towards the southern areas, causing heavy rainfall in the southern provinces and on Jeju Island throughout the weekend. The central regions, meanwhile, will see sweltering conditions during the weekend.
The weather agency has requested the public to continue tuning in to the latest weather updates and refrain from driving when commuting to work. It also advised the public not to go near underground areas and streams during heavy rainfall. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
In July, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, will be in South Korea to brief authorities here about the agency's final report on the safety of Japan's planned discharge of radioactive wastewater from its crippled Fukushima plant. Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun reported Grossi will first visit Japan next Tuesday to speak with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida before arriving here in Korea, and then to New Zealand and the Cook Islands, which are among the nations that have voiced much concern. Regarding the news, the Korean government said consultations are underway with the Foreign Ministry, while nothing has been said yet. All of the IAEA's earlier reports have described Tokyo's upcoming plan as, quote, appropriate. On the economic front, South Korea and Japan have agreed to reinstate their currency swap for the first time in almost a decade, this time worth $10 billion. Top finance officials from the two nations sat down today in Tokyo, reflecting the sign of a thaw in bilateral relationship. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
South Korea and Japan are resuming their currency swap pact after an 8-year pause. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho and his Japanese counterpart Junichi Suzuki held a bilateral meeting in Tokyo on Thursday to finalize the details. The amount set is $10 billion, relatively small in comparison to the $70 billion in 2011, before relations between the neighbors soured in 2015. However, experts say that this amount isn't set in stone.
It's likely that they will continue to increase the amount as economic cooperation between the two countries continues to strengthen in the future.
This comes amid improving diplomatic relations and with progress in other areas, such as with the restoration of both countries to each other's trade whitelists. Currency swaps between countries are typically agreements where currencies are lent for a certain period in times of emergency or to boost trade. This particular example secures dollar liquidity for South Korea, as Japan is set to provide US dollars. While there is no great need for South Korea to secure dollar liquidity, as its foreign reserves rank 9th in the world with a total of $421 billion as of May, this deal holds significance as it strengthens its financial safety net.
It also holds a lot of meaning as it marks a resumption of monetary cooperation between South Korea and Japan after its expiration back in 2015.
With this latest agreement reached between Seoul and Tokyo, watchers expect this to be a starting point for economic cooperation to flourish between not only South Korea and Japan, but also with the United States. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The South Korean government spent 289 trillion won, or roughly $219 billion in the first half of this year. The Ministry of Economy and Finance on Thursday held a meeting on financial execution presided over by Second Vice Finance Minister Choi Sang-dae. While discussing the current status of fiscal execution, the ministry said fiscal spending exceeded 35 trillion won from a year ago. It added in the second half of the year, it will ensure that projects to stabilize people's livelihoods and stimulate the economy are implemented in a timely manner. Korea's business sentiment remains bleak this month. That's according to the Bank of Korea that said the business survey index for June across all industries remained unchanged from May at 76. The index for manufacturing firms also remained the same at 73. Pundits are linking the finding to delayed recovery in the chip industry and other economic uncertainties. In July, figures for both indexes are forecast to drop by another point. A reading below 100 means businesses are more pessimistic than optimistic about the economy. And rising inflation is a global phenomenon. It has been steadily rising for the last 2 years and is impacting a lot of people. Our business correspondent Lee Dae-hyun tells us how millennials and Gen Zs in particular are surviving high inflation.
The world is coping with sky-high inflation. Over a third of all U.S. households, 38.5% in fact, have been finding it hard to pay their bills. Data released by the U.S. Census Bureau show that the equivalent of 89.1 million have said that they have been struggling between late April and early May. That's up from 34.4% a year ago. The UK too is suffering from a heavy consumer price rise, with the inflation rate staying at 10%. Food prices specifically increased by almost 20%, the highest rate in more than 45 years. So younger people are tightening their purse strings, and cash seems to be making a comeback among millennials and Gen Zs. There is a new trend called cash stuffing, where people are only using cash instead of credit or debit cards. The stuffing part refers to cash being put into envelopes. You divide the cash between envelopes for each budget category, such as groceries, transport, and hobbies, and only spend what's in them. The hashtag cash stuffing has been trending on social media and has now become a challenge for the younger generation. Some videos on TikTok have over 930 million views. It's quite noticeable how Gen Zs, who are used to mobile devices and digital payment methods, are going back to using cash.
I try my best to use cash because it's hard to know how much you've spent when using a card.
It's what differentiates you from other people, as it's quite different from common spending habits these days. That could be your own strategy for your social media account.
Young Koreans too are using anonymous group chats to share their budgeting tips. They also send each other their daily spending and evaluate each other's budgeting abilities. They say it motivates them more and feels more like a challenge.
Now it's important to know that these age brackets pursue joy in every activity. They don't have a sufficient amount of money, but they don't see this negatively or feel discouraged by it. Instead, they find fun ways to save money with their friends.
This, meanwhile, is quite gloomy news for the government, which is actually trying to boost individual spending. The government plans to give out more discount coupons for domestic travel and gift cards to be used at traditional markets in order to recover consumer spending. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Back in April, President Yoon and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden agreed to set up a separate bilateral consultative group to better deter North Korea's nuclear weapons ambitions. As a follow-up, the group's first meeting may take place in July. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
Seoul and Washington are pushing to hold their inaugural nuclear consultative group meeting as early as next month. South Korea's ambassador to the U.S. Cho Hyun-dong told reporters on Wednesday that the allies have made progress toward holding the first meeting of the group. The NCG was formed by the leaders of the two countries under the Washington Declaration in April. U.S. officials said the NCG would allow Seoul to provide a certain level of input into planning and executing Washington's nuclear deterrence against North Korea's threats. Cho added that the two sides are sharing information and discussing countermeasures at every level, especially as the North declared it will launch a second spy satellite following the failure of its first attempt in May. The much speculated participation of Japan in the group is reportedly not being discussed. However, the ambassador hinted at a trilateral summit between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo in D.C. The three countries are reportedly working on the schedule. Japanese media have recently reported that it is likely to take place as early as late August. On top of that, consultations between the three countries' military authorities on sharing real-time warning data on Pyongyang's missile launches are expected to be concluded soon. Back in November, the leaders of the three countries agreed to work toward sharing real-time data on North Korean missiles, calling it a major step for deterrence, peace, and stability. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
A North Korean satellite launched 7 years ago is rapidly deorbiting and falling back to Earth, according to a report. Citing a satellite tracking agency, The Voice of America reported North Korea's Gwangmyeong-4 is currently 200 to 240 kilometers above the Earth. The satellite's descent is accelerating, falling a significant 250 kilometers in the past year, and with a 100-kilometer drop in just the last 40 days. Experts estimate that it'll re-enter the atmosphere in the coming days or weeks. However, due to its small size, it's expected to completely burn up on re-entry before reaching the Earth's surface. Gwangmyeong-4 has been labeled a dead satellite due to its failure to operate. South Korean actor Park Hae-il, who starred in Decision to Leave and The Host, has been invited to join the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. The organization, which hosts the Oscars, said Wednesday that it extended invitations to 398 individuals to join its ranks this year. Park is the only South Korean actor to make the list this year. Screenwriter Chung Seok-young, who wrote the scripts for several works by director Park Chan-wook, including Decision to Leave, was also invited to join. Among those invited as new members this year include singer-songwriter Taylor Swift. Voting rights to the Academy Awards are given to the members who accept the invitation to join the organization.
The nation will be drenched by continuous monsoon rain until tomorrow. Jeollado provinces in Jeju Island will see heavy downpours of up to 250 millimeters. Torrential rainfall is also in the forecast for northern Gyeonggi-do province, with up to 200 millimeters in store. Parts of central regions in Gyeongsang-do provinces can expect up to 150. Locally, heavy downpours of 30 to 60 millimeters per hour are expected. The time of torrential downpours will vary depending on the region. Rain will be concentrated across central regions tonight. For southern regions, heavy rain will continue until tomorrow daytime. The ground has gotten weaker due to continuous rain, which will increase the risk of landslides and even property damages. Please take extra precautions beforehand. Tomorrow, Seoul and Busan will be starting off at 23 degrees Celsius. Central regions will be sweltering for the daytime, while the south coast will be breezier. Highs in Seoul get up to 31, Daejeon 30, Busan will be reaching 26 degrees. Another round of nationwide rain is in the forecast for next Tuesday. That's all for now, and to the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for our tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with the latest news tomorrow.
Global leader of eco-friendly future materials. Green tomorrow with POSCO.